This video response is going to go out to two people, and the first one is Charlie Puth, and that's because you uploaded a music video entitled One Call Away, and the other one is Taylor Swift, and that's because you uploaded a music video entitled Mine. Now, at first, many people would look at these songs, listen to these songs, and say, oh, how romantic. They appear to be romantic. However, with the proper perspective, and I have to change the point of view on this, okay? With the proper perspective, you can plainly see that both of these songs are very stupid. Now, I know you're scratching your head right now, and I can clearly comprehend that. I totally comprehend how you could see this as romantic. I really can. But let's take a look at it from a different perspective. If we do, we'll see how stupid both of these songs are. One is blatantly, obviously stupid. The other one, you have to work at it a little bit. So, let's go to work. Let's start with perspective first. What did I listen to when I was a young adult, late teenager, young adult, so on and so forth? What did I listen to? The number one band I listened to back then was the Bee Gees, specifically their Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. I loved that soundtrack. And so, that's the bar I set when I compare music of today. You know, if I'm comparing music, I compare music of today to that. That's a pretty high bar, I can tell you that. What did I listen to when I was a kid? What do I listen to today? A lot of the same stuff that I listened to back then. Elton John, Billy Joel, Carly Simon, Donna Summer, Stevie Nicks, and I could go on and on and on. But what was different back then than what it is today? Well, first of all, let's go into frequency modulation. We had frequency modulation back when I was younger. We have it today. What's the difference? Digital music was in its infancy back then. So, the crystal clear sound that you hear today wasn't the same as it was back then. What were we listening to? Well, I'll tell you exactly what we were listening to. We were listening to long-playing records, 8-track tapes, cassettes. Okay? So the music wasn't as crisp and clear as it is today. It is true that back then you could go to the music store, you could look up the sheet music of any of your songs and know what the lyrics were, but that sheet music was cost prohibitive. Long-playing records were cost prohibitive. 8-track tapes were cost prohibitive, and so were cassettes. And let me tell you something. If you played a song over and over again on one of these platforms, okay, think about this. If you played it long enough, you would ruin your long-playing record, your 8-track tape, your cassette tape. You'd play it over and over and you'd ruin it. So it was not as easy to learn the lyrics of a song back then as it is today. You didn't want to go out to the record store and buy these records over and over again just so you would know the lyrics of the song. And we didn't have internet back then either. You couldn't just look it up on the internet. That didn't happen. You say, well, didn't they have sheet music? Some libraries had sheet music. Some didn't. Depending on your library. Depending on whether your library wanted to invest in something like that. See what I mean? Now, back then, it is true, we had plenty of jobs back then. Shoot, you could go get your high school diploma, and 10 seconds later you could go get a job. That's not the way it is anymore. And you also have to keep in mind one other thing. That when recording artists made their songs back then, they didn't necessarily target them to late teenagers and early young adults. Most of those songs were targeted to an audience that was at least 21 years of age or older. Do you see what I mean? So that's another perspective that changes. Whew. Now then, there's also another perspective that changes. Remember, back then, education wasn't such a big thing for most people. Like I said, you get a high school diploma, you go out and you go get a job. That's not the way it is today. Shoot, you can get a university degree in this day and age, and you may still not get a job. So since education wasn't quite a priority back then, well, it is true that there were speed reading books published back in the late 1960s. Let me say that again. It was published back in the late 1960s. Okay? However, even though Harry Lorayne was alive and was touring the United States in the early 70s, he did not publish his memory book until 1974. It was not well advertised, and as you are probably well aware, when a person goes out and publishes a book for the very first time, and yes, he had published a few other books before he published this one, but when it's a first edition, it's going to be very expensive. So even if somebody back in those days knew about Harry Lorayne, knew about his memory book, which wasn't as many people as you'd like to think. Like I said, that particular book was not well advertised back then. So the likelihood that anybody would even know that the book existed was very unlikely. Matter of fact, even I didn't know about the existence of that book until 1994. That was a good 20 years after it had even been published. I hadn't even heard of Harry Lorayne until 1994. So even if they had known the existence of the book, they wouldn't have been quite so likely to have actually bought it, because, like I said, education wasn't that important back then. And even if they had, okay, it would have been a big chunk of change. A $10 book back then would have been more like 30 or 40 bucks today. So again, cost prohibitive. Now, when I bought my book, it was a lot less. I bought it off the internet. There you go. But we didn't have internet back then. Okay? And mail order. I know the shipping rates are much higher today than they were back then, but even then, you really didn't want to pay the shipping. Even our generation did everything we could not to not to pay for shipping. It was always nice when a company would actually give us free shipping just because we bought their book. What it really ended up being was that they would incorporate the price of the shipping into the price of the book, and that made it free. Neat trick, huh? Nice little selling technique. So, and you say, well, did any libraries carry the memory book by Harry Lorayne? A lot of libraries did. Some didn't. It just depended on the library and how much demand there would have been for that kind of a book. Back then, there wouldn't have been such a high demand. Today, a little different story. Not to mention the fact that I have discussed this book more than once on my YouTube channel. I've been on YouTube now for 7 years, so a lot of people are aware of this book today that weren't aware of it when I was younger. So, taking all of this into consideration, and knowing now that songs like One Call Away and Mine are actually targeted to late teenagers and early young adults, you can see that what you would have thought originally was very romantic now ends up being very stupid. And I will say that it was not necessarily Taylor Swift's fault for creating a very stupid song, because she probably didn't know any of this. Now that she does, she could probably look at it and say, that was a dumb song, we got to do better. And I hope she does. So, when it comes to Taylor Swift music, most of the time I actually like it. There was actually 2 songs that I've actually reviewed so far on my YouTube channel, and I like both of those. But this one, yeah, not so much. Alright, but we're going to go into the more obvious one first. Charlie Puth, he puts out a song entitled One Call Away. Check out one of the main lyrics of that song. Are you seriously going to tell me that you have any attribute about yourself that is in any way superior to an extraterrestrial immigrant from a highly advanced civilization, in which every member of that society is 10 times smarter than us? Really? No. That is one of the dumbest statements I've ever heard. And that's why I call your song stupid. Sounds romantic, but if you think about it, that's one of the dumbest lines I've ever heard of. As a matter of fact, if Meghan Trainor had heard that, do you know what her response would be? She made a whole song about it. It would have been no. And she would have been right. Although, later on, I'm going to criticize her song No for entirely different reasons. Because it also, if you see it from a certain perspective, okay, if you see it from a certain perspective, her song is utterly stupid. She doesn't realize, as she recites the lyrics of her song into her music video, Meghan Trainor does not realize that the very thing she's saying in that song can actually backfire on her. But I'll deal with that on another day. Okay? Let's deal with this. We've now established that Charlie Puth's song, One Call Away, is one of the dumbest songs on the internet today. It's one of the dumbest songs on the radio today. It's one of the dumbest songs on anything. I'm not kidding you. This song is dumb. Now, what about Taylor Swift and Mine? Now, that's a little harder to detect. And I'm sure that Taylor Swift overlooked this song when she made it. Okay, so now we're going to ask some questions, and if you listen to the questions carefully and she answers back, I think you'll begin to realize how stupid this song actually is. Number one. Okay, you're talking about two people, a young man and a young lady. The young man is in college, okay, and he is, to pay for that college, he is trying to wait tables at a local restaurant in a small town. I would assume that the small town is some kind of a suburb of a major metropolitan area. That's why he commutes from the small town to the major metropolitan area to go to college. I can just about imagine that. Now then, okay, so now let me ask you that. Now, think about this. He is a college-educated kid. Hopefully he's checked out my YouTube channel. He has gotten the education from me too. I would really hope he did that. But the first question that comes to mind is, why are you saying that the young lady was a flight risk? What was the whole thing on that? You don't exactly give the answer to that one. I'd love to know the answer to that. Now, why do you think that the young lady's father was careless? Again, no answer. They don't give a specific reason why this young lady thinks that her father or her mother was careless. They don't specify any of that at all. Now, next one is, what mistakes did the parents make? Again, you don't specify any of this. So, again, you're sitting there scratching your head, man, we need more details here. Really, we do. Now, think about this. He's in college waiting tables, and you guys have nothing figured out? Really? What is he majoring in? Theater? Really? With all the access to the internet and all the things that I've presented on this YouTube channel, and you're telling me that this couple has nothing figured out despite of his college education? Really? That is one of the dumbest statements I've ever heard. Now you're beginning to see why I think this song is dumb. Okay? And here's the thing, you got nothing figured out, yet you married this young lady married the guy. Really? That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard of. You don't get married to somebody until you got things figured out. Now, granted, something unexpected could happen, and then you couldn't have everything all figured out, but under normal circumstances, gee, this should have been all figured out. Now, are you beginning to see what's going on here in this song? Okay? Just because he decides to sit you down next to this body of water, whether it be a lake or a river or whatever, and he's being real nice to you and he's being real romantic to you, or, well, not really to you specifically, I'm talking about to this young lady. This young guy is being really romantic to this young lady, according to your story, and he's out there and he's being all romantic and whatever on this body of water, and he's got apparently, in the music video, I see this boat. Okay, so he's got a nice boat. you say you have nothing figured out, and yet he's got a boat. How in the world does that happen? It doesn't happen. That's just totally illogical and stupid. Are you beginning to see the illogical stupidity of this song as it progresses? All right, now granted, you needed a lot of perspective to see that. I will grant you that, and I'm sure when you created the song, you never saw it that way. But now that you are actually seeing things from a completely different perspective, are you seriously telling me that a young lady like that, your lyrics say that she is very careful about who she gets romantic with. Well, if she's that careful, she would not have gotten romantically involved with this guy. He should have had a much better plan. Do you understand? This should have been far better plan than what was discussed in this song. That's why the song is stupid. And if you begin to realize that, there you go. So, anyway, I decided to be a little nicer to Taylor Swift because, like I said, it all began with her. It was more of a perspective thing. I don't think she knew. I don't know that she knew about my YouTube channel. I don't know whether she ever knew about the Harry Lorraine book I was discussing or anything else. So without those things, of course, it would be more romantic. But now that you know all this song becomes suddenly very stupid. And because you are pumping this in the ears of the late teenagers and the early young adults, they think this is all perfect. It isn't perfect. And now you're beginning to see why. So, like I said, I did not mind giving you guys better perspective, and I felt that was only fair, especially to Taylor Swift. I feel that's pretty fair to her. Now, as for Charlie Puth, really? Charlie Puth, I don't even want to get into him anymore. That was just dumb. It was so blatantly dumb. It was just as bad as Carly Rae Jepsen when she goes out, commits identity theft, and then on top, well, she didn't commit the identity theft. She allowed herself to be a victim of identity theft. That was number one. And then she encourages kids to rush out to an ATM anytime they draw one, please, and draw out as much money you like. That is not the most, shall we say, intelligent thing to do in this day and age when jobs are not plentiful and money is scarce. You just don't do things like that. And for somebody who has had specialized training, now you say, well, wait a minute, what is your specialized training? I had 2 years of COBOL. Okay, COBOL is an acronym for the Common Business Oriented Language. Okay, that was a computer language that I studied in the late 1980s. In order to study that particular computer language, you had to have accounting skills, verbal skills that came from English, you also had to have mathematical skills, and you had to have computer tech skills as well. Do you see what I mean? So with all that extra information, you should begin to realize that what Carly Rae Jepsen was promoting in her two songs was just downright ignorant. Just downright ignorant. And is being pumped into the brains of late teenagers and early young adults who are impressionable as it is, and if they don't have the proper education, they don't realize what she's saying is wrong. And what Charlie Puth was saying was wrong. And what Taylor Swift was saying in this particular song was wrong. Do you see what I mean? So, therefore, I have to say that these two songs are stupid, but you had to have all that perspective to see it. You know, and like I said, with Taylor Swift, I'm going to be kinder to you because you probably didn't know all this. Now that you do, will you please create more intelligent songs? I have to say that Shake It Off was a very intelligent song. Love Story was a very intelligent song. I was very disappointed. Now you have to also understand that just because an artist has a couple of good songs on the radio, on the internet, doesn't matter. The point is that not all their songs are brilliant. 2 of her songs were very brilliant, but not all of them were. So, are you beginning to realize what I'm saying here? Good. Alright, now, wow, that was a wallop in education. You didn't think that I could educate you that much with just 2 songs. But I did. So, now you can begin to realize why I have such a problem with Carly Rae Jepsen. I definitely have a problem with Charlie Puth. Okay, I have somewhat of a problem with Meghan Trainor, especially with one of her songs. Now, the other song she did that was real famous, and I can't think about it right now. It was one I honestly thought that it was something about she's not trouble, she's bass. Sorry, I mispronounced it last time. She's bass and not treble. Get the picture, okay? That particular song, I really didn't have much of a problem with that song. But then she comes out with this song that has something to do with no, okay? And that song I do have a problem with, and I will cover that on a later video, okay? So bear with me. I will get back to you, Meghan Trainor. So bear with me. But Taylor Swift, now that you know all this extra information, please do not sing songs like mine. Mine is not a brilliant song. And I think you can now see why. Okay, it's not that I'm just calling it stupid. I'm now pointing out how stupid the thing actually is. You left a lot of questions unanswered, and more importantly, you're showing people that this is a good way. It's not a good way of life. That was terrible. It was absolutely awful. And now you see why. You see, if you have all that extra knowledge, you could have very easily planned for a lot of the things that were happening in life, and so therefore, this wouldn't have been so bad of a situation. Whew. Wow, that's a lot of information for you. So again, like I said, both of these songs look romantic. They are actually very stupid, and now you can see why. Whew. But I will grant you could say the same thing about some of the songs that I listened to when I was a kid. But again, those particular songs weren't necessarily targeted to young adults or to late teenagers. They did hear them, but not necessarily did they embrace them like kids are doing today. Remember, if you're going to target an audience like late teenagers or early young adults, make absolutely sure that the things you're singing about are intelligent. Because these kids need intelligence. They really do. Alright. I think I'm finished for tonight. I think you're beginning to realize how I think, why I think the things that I think, and when you get to be more like me, you'll be a little more critical of music like this. So, Taylor Swift's Shake It Off was a great song. I was thrilled about it. Taylor Swift's Love Story, I loved it. There was nothing really wrong with it. There was a couple of questions, but there wasn't anything wrong with it. It's just this particular one was not very intelligent. And now you see why. But Charlie Puth, you need to go back to the drawing board and do better. And I know you can do better, and I'm going to say the same thing to Carly Rae Jepsen. Get off the scene until you do a better job with music. And wait till I talk to you about Meghan Trainor. You're going to be kind of surprised at what I have to say. You would think that Meghan Trainor's song was brilliant, it was wonderful, but it can actually backfire. And I will show you how it can backfire, and then therefore. Okay, enough for tonight. I will tell you more in a music video, in a future video, so I would like for you to stay tuned.